Well, hi everybody, it's Joe Chaffee on this Thursday, September 27th, 2018, and I have to start this off right off the bat by wishing a happy birthday to my friend and former colleague, and the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that is going back to 1979 when I picked up a phone by accident, and he happened to be on the other end of the phone and asked me if I wanted a job. And I said yes. And that was Alan Casper, who was at the time working for WCBS TV in New York. He's had a great career in New York television, at Fox 5 here in New York for a while after finishing up at WCBS TV, Satellite News Channel, which was sort of a early competitor to CNN, and then at New Jersey 101.5 radio, where he and I spent a number of years working together. So a very, very happy birthday. As I said to him the other day, you not only changed over to rain in terms of your age, you not only changed over to rain, but you've gone over to drizzle and fog. And you know what? I'm kind of right behind you. So I can't tell you how much my love for forecasting came from him, because in the New York market, which up until he came on the air, he really was the first person that treated weather with a certain degree of seriousness, and he was an out-and-out snow lover. So I could certainly relate to that, and most of my friends who grew up in this area and know him and know his work, we all sort of felt the same way. So again, happy birthday to you, Alan. I hope you had a great day. In the meantime, we got a lot of stuff going on again today, because we've got Tropical Storm Kirk, which is moving through the Leeward Islands. We have what was and soon will be again probably Leslie, either subtropical or tropical storm, or maybe even hurricane, who knows. We also have Category 3 and soon to be probably Category 4 Hurricane Rosa in the Pacific side, which, normally these Pacific storms really just kind of stay out to sea and don't bother anybody, but this is really beginning to look like it's going to not only come into Baja California, but then head up into Arizona and New Mexico and bring some heavy rains there and up the Rockies. So we're going to take a look at all three of those things. Front and center at the moment is another round of potential flash flooding here in the Northeast, and we want to start off and show you what we've got with watches that are up, because we have a slew of flood watches, and you can see on the Weather Service's map here, make it just a little bit bigger. It's a narrowish band, but a band nonetheless that goes from northeast Georgia all the way up to Boston and in eastern Massachusetts. That area under a flash flood or a flood watch. Some areas, the rainfall amounts were so excessive that rivers and streams are at bankful, so any rain is going to cause them to flood out. In other areas where it's maybe not quite to that level, but the rain could be a bit heavier, they have the flash flood warning up. Either way, it's flooding, and it's problematic. In the New York, in northern New Jersey, through southern Connecticut the other day, many areas getting 6 to 8 inches of rain. So we've already gotten about two months worth of rain or more, and we had some last night with some thunderstorms. So now there's more to go. Also, by the way, we've got some frost advisories and freeze issues tonight across the Dakotas. A sign of the early invasion of some colder air coming into the northern plains, and another reminder of the season change that is underway. And with respect to severe weather tonight, let's just, I'll bring up the Storm Prediction Center's map, and then we'll go to the radar. I think I did put the national radar up here somewhere. And at least for today, last night, severe weather risk really turned out to be a big non-event in my neck of the woods anyway. There were severe storms in Maryland and around the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area and southward, and there were some strong thunderstorms from on up into Massachusetts and parts of central New England, but there was a bit of a hole in the middle where the marine layer got in the way yesterday, and that caused those thunderstorms there the weekend, and that was my neck of the woods. So here we have the risk of severe weather tonight is a marginal risk and a small area of slight risk in western North Carolina. Again, this is all part of that old front that went through and stalled out. Now we're seeing a wave of low pressure moving along it, and that is really what has to play through here in order to bring in some really, really nice weather for the weekend. And indeed, it is going to be a very nice weekend. So I'm going to, now we'll go get to the tropical storm stuff. And we're going to start off, I want to start off with Tropical Storm Kirk, as it is nearing the Leeward Islands. It's about, it's about 50 or 60 miles east. It's north of Barbados in terms of the center, and getting close to Martinique. Top winds here are 50 miles an hour. But I want you to look really closely at this satellite loop, and you can see the impact that the shear is having, and the wind. You see the clouds are getting all blown away to the northeast. If you look in the Eastern Caribbean, the lower clouds are moving east to west. The higher clouds are moving west to east. That is the wind shear in play, and that's blowing the tops of these thunderstorms away to the northeast. Also, if you look carefully, you can actually see the circulation, the low-level circulation is coming out from underneath those cloud tops. So this thing is getting sheared out, and we are still carrying, on the Hurricane Center, still carrying 50-mile-an-hour top winds of 50 miles an hour. But don't be surprised if this thing rapidly becomes an open wave once it gets on the other side of the islands into the Eastern Caribbean Sea. And the zone of shear is pretty extensive. It runs all the way back to Jamaica and south of Hispaniola. I really doubt that this thing is going to survive much beyond the next 48 hours. I expect it to be gone rather quickly once it gets over to the other side. That exposed circulation center is problematic. Up in the upper right, you can see what was subtropical storm Leslie that became post-tropical Leslie, and now may be coming back to becoming tropical storm Leslie on the loop. There is, that very broad circulation, and it's also, when I say broad, I'm just saying in terms of, it's a huge system here that's spinning out there. But we're waiting for a core of thunderstorm activity to develop closer to the circulation center. It doesn't look like that's happened yet, but we're starting to see a little bit of bursting here, so that could be the beginnings of it. And I would expect that this would probably go back to being a subtropical storm or a tropical storm in short order, once the Hurricane Center feels confident enough that there is it's getting more of a low-level circulation developing. And it's really not moving very much. It's just kind of sitting out there. And I think that's what you're going to see probably for the next week or so, is that system maybe drifting southwest or west for a while and then just sort of milling around, waiting for something to come along and pick it up. Meanwhile, back here in the northeast, you can see all the clouds that are streaming northward with the next round of precip that we're going to get here, and the radar is pretty loaded tonight. If you take a look at it, we've already got some heavy rains moving into parts of the Catskills, and some rain beginning to arrive. This is as of 7:15 Eastern Time. So, as always, folks, remember that you're watching this dated. If you're looking at this on a replay later tonight, so check your local radars and your forecasts at your local National Weather Service site. You can access that by going to weather.gov. The rain is extensive, goes back into all of Pennsylvania, back through West Virginia, but not that much going on on the Virginia side. There in the Blue Ridge Mountains, at least from what I can see on the radar, and then that runs down into the Carolinas. But there will be some more rain for those areas to work through, in case Johnny Quest is listening, and I know I am because he's got his canoe out. But a little bit more to work through before we finally see some genuine improvement around here, which I think will be most welcome. Now, on to, where are we going here? Here's the wide view, by the way, on the satellite in the Atlantic. There is some kind of tropical wave that's coming off the African coast, but again, shear is going to be a big issue. And by the way, look at Kirk. Look at the cloud stream that runs from the tropical storm straight east-northeast out into the Atlantic. Just shows you how strong the upper air wind shear is. And it's a testament to the fact that we've had 2 hurricanes this season out of 12 named storms. That's a very low ratio. And the problem has been getting beyond the tropical storm status, because we've had all this wind shear running around. Between that and the dry air coming in off the Sahara, that's been the other problem. And now, of course, we're getting later into the season, so it starts to get a bit more difficult, especially when you begin to see these systems coming down out of Canada and dropping southward. The shear playing such a huge role, that's why I think Kirk is going to disappear, and Leslie will reappear and be on the scene in the central Atlantic for a while. Eventually, it might be shooting up some waves here along the East Coast. Let's take you to the forecast from the Hurricane Center for tonight, which they're going. This is from the 5 p.m. advisory, 14.2 and 60.2, which is virtually near the island of Martinique, a handful of miles away, and top winds 50 miles an hour, moving west-northwest at 14. Forecast to become, the Hurricane Center is keeping it a tropical storm through Friday afternoon. I think it may weaken a bit faster than that, and then they have it down to a depression, and then after 2 p.m. Saturday, I think we can just wave goodbye, because at that point it will be a remnant low. Now to the other system, and that is Category 3, Hurricane Rosa. Look at the well-defined eye. It's starting to get that signature look that Category 3 or higher hurricanes get. The beginnings of that, what I always like to call that buzzsaw look, which you really don't achieve until you get to that strong Category 4, almost Category 5 status. But certainly a major hurricane and well-developed. And while it is moving toward the west-northwest, it is about to make a change. Excuse me. If you look out in the Pacific, in the upper left, you can see these clouds here that are kind of, we have the clouds moving eastward, but the lower clouds are sort of rotating northwest to southeast and then northeast. That is the next trough that's swinging in and dropping southward, and it's going to pick Rosa up and turn it northward and then northeastward. And here's the Hurricane Center's forecast. I decided to use the interactive map tonight. I figured since it's near land, it's a bit more useful. And I'm going to put the I'm going to put the most likely time of arrival of gales, so we can get a time frame with respect to the track of this storm. So a sharp turn. A sharp right turn is imminent on the track, turning it northward and then northeastward. It appears that landfall will likely be, sometime on Monday, and then moving. The Hurricane Center's forecast is actually a little further to the north. There's been some minor adjustments to the models. They're following pretty much consensus, and then taking it into over the northern part of the Gulf of California, and from there it's on to Arizona. So there's going to be some big rains here. You can just see from perspective where San Diego is on the upper left. On the uppermost left is San Diego, and then you have Tijuana on the other side, Ensenada, and on further south, Bahia Sebastian Vizcaíno. I'm trying to get this. I'm using my Italian to figure out the pronunciation, because it's pretty close. Well, you see how the track is. So there's going to be, you're certainly going to get tropical storm conditions. The tricky part, I think, is trying to figure out how quickly this weakens. The water temperatures north of 25 degrees north are fairly cool. If it's moving fast enough, the weakening will likely be slowed a little bit. But it'll be interesting to see just how quickly that happens, because that is going to have a big impact on the Baja California. And then, oftentimes, because of the body of water in the Gulf of California is not that small, center of circulation gets over it, the water is kind of warm up there. It does get a little bit of a shot of juice, and it might hold on to some strength a little bit longer than it otherwise would. But this is a rare opportunity for us to see something like this, because frankly it just doesn't happen, or at least it hasn't happened much in the last several years or so. So I'm just going to go right to the weather maps here. A couple of things I noticed about the GFS today in the long range, and the European and the Canadian, that at around day 10 they were all about the same, which is basically to show an invasion of fairly cool air into the U.S. But let's get there first. On the lower left, you're going to see Rosa come into the scene, and that should happen shortly. Meanwhile, for tonight and tomorrow, we've got this wave that's moving up northward with what could be about an inch or so of rain, or an inch to let's say half an inch to an inch and a half for much of this area from northeastern Virginia, Maryland on up into southern New England. The other day, we wound up models being off by a factor of 3. A lot of areas getting triple what was forecast. I don't know if it's going to happen this time around. The dynamics here are a bit different. You had a really good overrunning pattern 2 days ago. This is a wave that's moving along, so there may not be much time, and much of the rain will be over with. In Philadelphia, for example, the rain should be done by, I would say, by 7 or 8 a.m., and in New York City, maybe by about 9, 10 a.m. as that wave moves out and high pressure builds in for the weekend. And here comes Rosa as it moves northwestward and northwestward, weakening as it moves in, but you can see the track there over the Gulf of California, holds on to its strength and into Arizona with some fairly big rains. Actually maintains a tight little surface low there, which you don't often see. There might be some interaction going on. If we pull up the upper air, there may be some interaction going on, getting a little bit of juice from this cutoff low that is going to be off the coast of California between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So that might have some impact here. You can watch the on the upper air how it gets picked up by that trough. It might be better if I go to that western region. It might go out far enough. I wish he had a map that was somewhere in between, but all right, this actually works. So here's that approaching trough. Remember, I showed you on the satellite those clouds rotating around counterclockwise, showing you that cutoff low that's coming into Northern California, and that first one lifts up, but the weakness is enough to draw it northward, and then the second one comes in and picks it right up, and then kind of punts it. It's like a punter punting a football, punting it away to the northeast. So it does get a little bit of juice from that upper air system as it moves in. Here's another view on the tighter view of it. Maps, by the way, as always, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. There it goes. It's moving quickly, so it's going to put down rain in Arizona, for example. It's basically about a 9 to 12 hour event. So that is really going to be, that's pretty fast. So there'll be a limited amount of rain that will come out of this. It'll rain hard, but for a relatively short period of time. The GFS is showing what looks like a large patch of 2 to 4 inch rain amounts. But I think you could probably at least nudge that up to 4 to 6 or even 6 to 8 with impacts from mountains, a lot of orographic effect and that kind of thing. I don't, to be fair, I don't understand the local climate down in that part of the country, so I would certainly defer to local forecasters there and the weather service at weather.gov if you want to check for more specifics. But it wouldn't shock me if we're going to see some big rain amounts from all this tropical moisture basically moving into a desert area. And by the way, with respect to the east, as far as the rainfall is concerned, with tonight, looks like the GFS may have just backed off a little bit, but let's take a look. I mean, it has kind of backed off a bit to half an inch to an inch, but it's been underperforming. The model has been underperforming, so reality has been outperforming the forecast. So I kind of went for up to an inch and a half in some places, and I'm going to hold to that. I just want to check the NAM rainfall. See, the NAM is much more bullish, and it did a pretty decent job the last time around. So, you can see the whitish areas come out to 1 3/4 and 2 inches. So, I'm going to lean more toward the bullish upside, and also the fact that the radar, I think, is reflecting perhaps that the models might be underdoing the rain to some degree, because the radar does seem to look busier than what some of the models have indicated. Just want to check for laughs the HRRR. Yeah, the HRRR, which actually did pretty good with that big rain the other day. Even more bullish with rainfall amounts with some stripes of 2 inches plus. I think this is the kind of scenario where something like that could happen. Back to the up. I want to talk about the long range today. We'll go to the upper air pattern, because when all three models do something, at least it gives you a little bit more confidence. Sometimes the way these models are, that's a really stretchy statement to make, but I'm going to take it as a sign that maybe they're all finally getting on the same page. Of course, as soon as I've said that, I guarantee you the next couple of runs are going to be different, but we'll see. I'm going to use the 12Z as they match up together. By the way, the deep trough that's in the middle part of right along or just west of 90 degrees west, it continues to be very chilly in Canada. That is a very interesting development for the month of September. It's been a cold month in Canada. What it means in the long term or not, I don't know, but it is something that we're going to address in about a week or so when I come back from vacation, and I have my special guest on, which I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I will let the cat out of the bag at some point, but not yet. Anyway, we have the ridge, that flat ridge in the east, still there, still kind of a busy jet stream in Canada, but there seems to be, at least the models seem to want to make a fairly deep trough in the eastern part of the U.S. Come around day 9 and 10. So that would be next weekend. And this would be pretty chilly. Here's the GFS at 240 hours. Here's the European at 240 hours. And here's the Canadian at 240 hours. They're all kind of the same. There are differences between the two in terms of where the trough position is exactly, but they all kind of show the same idea. The Canadian has it perhaps a little bit faster, and the GFS have it a little bit faster, bringing the axis of the trough through. The European kind of lags behind, but they all seem to want to go to this idea of a trough in the east and a ridge in the western part of the United States. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays out, because that will start to bring down some cooler than normal temperatures. And meanwhile, as far as next week is concerned in the east, because that ridge in the east is going to flex a little bit, we are going to see a bit of warmer weather coming into play, but it's not going to get oppressively humid. It will get a little more humid, but I think the dew points will probably only get back into the 60s, low 60s, which is, borderline okay. It's not too bad. But here's our big high for the weekend, which is nice. So, yes, a nice weekend for us. And then we've got the backdoor front that never really makes it because the ridge in the south is going to be too strong. So we have to wait. Actually, this run actually does kind of bring that backdoor here on Wednesday. Barely, but it is there. I take it back. So it did bring the backdoor through here. So that might actually keep things a little bit cooler on Wednesday before we go back to the southwest flow. Here's the real cold front, which arrives late on Thursday. That pushes through with not much fanfare, maybe a couple of showers with that, and then a stronger front with some much cooler air. This is the real cool push that comes in for next weekend. So this will be the weekend of October 6th and 7th. And of course, at that point, you have another hurricane, by the way, that is making a run toward the Baja Peninsula. And also in the longer range, some suggestion that maybe something may try and come into either the Northwest Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. But the models have been very, very inconsistent when it comes to that. One other thing we should look at, I think, is probably what's going to happen with Leslie. So what's soon to be Leslie again. So let's take a look at this. And here you have it in the Central Atlantic. We can actually look. I want to look at the. Do we have the 18Z run with this? That's the Canadian. So let's go to the 18Z run. That was the Canadian model I showed you, by the way. Here's the GFS. And, all right, so here's the GFS, the 18Z GFS. There's your system that is going to be Leslie again. You see how it drifts southwestward and then kind of loops and then hangs around and then eventually just misses a trough. The last model run picked it up, misses that trough, and then it just eventually just gets picked up away to the northeast. So at the end of the day, this is going to be an Atlantic system and an ocean storm and not a big problem, barring any surprise. And some of the models were trying to do something here east of the Bahamas along about day 9 or 10 on a couple of runs. A little weakness there, lower pressures. We'll see. I'm not, this is 10 days out, so I'm not going to get wrapped up in it. But we're at that, again, getting to that time of year where we're going to start looking less and less at the tropical Atlantic and more at the subtropics and also further west into the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico for any kind of development. So let's go to the board. Let's come to the chat board with everybody. So hang on. Nice to see a nice crowd here tonight. Let's scroll here. Hold on. Hang on, folks. I got to pop through the chat. Make sure my shot is set. All right. So, first of all, a big collective hello to everybody. David Schwartz, it's hard for tropical systems to combine because of the Fujiwara effect. That's correct. Usually keeps them apart. What sometimes happens is that the stronger system will wind up overpowering and absorbing the weaker one. We've seen that happen from time to time. Either if they're kind of equal strength, or maybe they don't even have to be equal strength, but if there's counterbalancing going on in other parts of the atmosphere around it, you could wind up seeing them rotate around each other, or as I said, sometimes the stronger will just absorb the weaker. We actually saw that happen earlier this season on the Pacific side with an almost hurricane, if I remember. I forgot which one it was, that got absorbed by another hurricane within 24 hours, if I remember correctly. It went from being a hurricane to absorbed in less than a day and a half. I gotta go back and check. Okay, just running through your. Any thoughts on the Medicane? David Schwartz asking me about the storm that's in the Mediterranean Sea. You know what? I didn't get a chance to look. So I don't really want to speak to it because I really didn't get a chance to look to see what's going on. Colt Sheffield, Southeast Texas drowning. Radar check at 7:34. Not much happening now on the radar though. The only place it's raining is down near Brownsville. So you might be catching a break. Based on what I'm looking at on the radar right now, it's pretty clear down your way. Aren't lots amounts of the shear in the tropical Atlantic a feature of El Nino? Correct, they are. Very much so. At least a strengthening El Nino, and that's what we could be having now. The El Nino may have gotten to the point in the West Pacific where it's strengthened, where it has been strengthening enough this summer that it's had an impact on the upper level winds here on the Atlantic side, creating all this wind shear. When you have a La Nina, you have the opposite, actually. That's when the Atlantic rages and the Pacific tends to be less active. So La Nina years produce big hurricane seasons in terms of number of storms on the Atlantic side. So we may have a tropical system retain its status and be on land in Arizona. If it's moving fast enough, it might briefly still be a named system by the time it gets there. Shocking as that might be. I don't think California is getting a whole lot of rain. Yeah, it is Green Fire 19. Yeah, it seems to have shifted a little bit further to the east. It's going to be close for southeastern California. Again, it's really fast, though. We're talking about maybe 10 hours worth of precip here before it's all said and done. Atlantic hurricanes, no Atlantic hurricanes, says Anthony Orr, since September 14th. The Atlantic has had no hurricanes between September 15th to the 27th, and 3 other times in the past 20 years. 2009, 15, and 16. So it does happen from time to time. There's nothing overly unusual with having a quiet stretch like we're having now from the standpoint of hurricanes. I mean, we do have named tropical storms. The interesting thing is that this is a year of a lot of first with these subtropical storms that have developed, and now, of course, with Leslie being the one that's going to be subtropical and extratropical twice, and still we don't know whether it'll become tropical at some point, purely tropical, but we'll see. There are always interesting facets to every hurricane season. If you look hard enough, you certainly can find them. All right, so you know what? We can call that our night tonight. I think we did pretty good. We were 37, a little less than maybe 34 minutes into this live stream because I did get started late. Let me just, before saying goodbye, a little bit of shameless self-promotion, as I call it. For those of you who really are into weather, you might like my Patreon platform that I set up. It is all weather. It is without nonsense, no ads. You get posts from my website, but you also get posts that don't go on my website. So that's a good thing. And I have been doing a video every morning between 9 and 9:30 that is exclusive only to Patreon members. It's on YouTube, but it's an unlisted video, so you can't see it unless you are on Patreon, and I give you the link ahead of time because I'm able to message you and you are able to message me. So I post the link for Patreon members and you get an exclusive video. I'm trying to do one every day, schedule permitting. If I can't do it, I'll let you know why. And folks that are on there have been saying that they've been enjoying it. It's a subscription. It's a subscription site. It's just $2 a month. I'm going to put the link up there on the chat board for those of you who are interested. It goes a long way to help support what I'm trying to do on my weather pages and also on this YouTube channel. And I appreciate those of you who have considered doing that. Also, you can support by going to Amazon if you use the Amazon link and do your shopping from it, and I'm going to put that on the chat right now. And if you shop on Amazon, Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin, and that is out of their pocket. I'm just typing up. There you go. So that should be the link. I'll make sure it works, and it does. And the Patreon link also should work, and that does. So again, thank you for those of you who would consider either one, and it is very much appreciated. Whoops. I don't know, I may have accidentally knocked you guys out. Hang on a second. Let me see if I'm still on. I think I might be still on. Hang on. I was a little trigger happy there. Hang on a second. Loading the page. Am I still? Yep, I'm still live. Okay. I accidentally X'd you guys out. I apologize for that. Okay, but you're still there. Oh boy. It shows you how much I really need a vacation here, folks, which is where I'm going to be next week. I'm going to be on vacation next week. So, I'm going to take it a little easier. I will try and I'm going to do some weather stuff, but I am also going to take some much needed time off because you can see how punchy I'm getting and how kind of absent-minded I'm getting too. I need a rest. So in the meantime, I got tonight and tomorrow to get through, and then I can breathe. So join me, the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight on Facebook. You can see that on Meteorologist Joe Chaffee on my Facebook page. And I will load the Joe and Joe show tonight on YouTube afterwards, so you can also watch it out of my video library. And I think that really covers it. So have a great night. Be safe. And we will see you tomorrow. And thank you again for those of you who have either shopped on Amazon, joined Patreon, or have occasionally hit Super Chat here on my YouTube channel. It really goes a long way, and I do appreciate it.